Let's see if this works. Okay, we're good there. And I'll just make sure that it's actually sharing what I want it to share. Okay, there we go. So we're going to go to chapter 7 tonight. Which is going to be based on probability.
Thank you.
So essentially, the likelihood of something happening or not happening is going to be the key for probability. It's a branch of statistics, but it's going to be a very important part of statistics. Just building off of what we did on the exam before break. But there are some terms that you'll need here. Probability experiment, essentially doing an experiment in order to measure the chances of something happening. The outcome is the result of doing a trial of the experiment. That would be what you're looking for. And the probability, like I said, is the chance that an event will occur. Often denoted as P parentheses A, that is probability of event A occurring. So a classic example of this, does anybody have a coin on them by chance? No? Okay. I'll just roll with it then. Say I had a quarter in my hand, and if I were going to toss it in the air and I wanted to see if the result was tails, what are the chances of that happening? 50-50 chance. So probability of tails, so P parentheses T, would equal 0.5 or 50% is how that works there. Probability values are always between 0 and 1. If you get a probability of 0, that means it ain't going to happen. No matter how many times you do it, there is no way it's going to occur. Probability of 1, that means it's all going to happen. The closer you are to 1, the more likely it is to happen. The closer you are to 0, the less likely it is to happen. You can't go above 1 and you can't go below 0. When calculating probabilities, you should go to 3 significant digits. So in other words, 3 places beyond the decimal. But there's different types of probability out there. The first one is theoretical. Essentially, you run an experiment equally likely chance of something happening. So no result is favored over the other. And essentially, to figure out the probability of an event, you look at how many favorable outcomes you have. So think of this as favorable outcomes. So favorable outcomes. Over all possibilities. The thing with theoretical probability is that we could run the experiment infinitely many times, and we would be able to arrive at an answer. Relative frequency is when we repeatedly perform the experiment, but not infinitely many times. It can also be called empirical probability. Basically, how many times A happens over the total number of events that occurred. Sometimes we can have subjective probabilities, which are based on estimates. So not necessarily something that you can calculate right away, but you can have a pretty good guess on what the result is going to be. Any questions on any of the three types of probabilities there? Okay, so an example, if you toss a quarter, what is the theoretical probability of getting a head? What do you think? Percent. 50%? Or as a decimal, 0.500, which by the way is the same as one favorable outcome, so the head, out of two possibilities that can occur. However, if we toss a quarter 100 times and it lands heads up 43 times and tails 57, what is the relative frequency probability of getting a head? So relative frequency is how many times it occurs over a total number of events. So how many times did we get heads?
43.
43 out of how many trials? 100. So then as a percent, that would be 43%. Or as a decimal, that would be 0.43. Okay, another type of example here of relative frequency probability. In a drawer, 10 black socks, 6 navy, and 12 white socks. If one is selected, what is the probability that the sock is black? So in other words,